They say the forest breathes, not with the rustling of leaves or the moan of the wind, but with a deep guttural pulse that mimics a dying heart. Beneath its twisted canopy of blackened trees and rotten fog, something ancient stirs, forgotten by time, feared by all. For centuries, no map has dared to chart its shadowy borders. No local guide will whisper its name, but the brave, the foolish, or the damned, they enter. They always enter, and none ever return the same. Deep within this cursed expanse, roots twist like serpents, bark weeps blood, and eyes blink from hollow knots. The earth drinks secrets, the trees remember, and the rituals, unspeakable, inhuman rituals, continue, as they always have, in the dark where no god dares to look. This is not just a tale of witches and shadows. This is a legacy of horror, passed through bloodlines and etched in bone. 8 generations, 8 terrifying chapters, one forest that refuses to die. Welcome to the Witch's Forest, cursed trees and unholy rituals, where every step is a mistake and every whisper might be your last. Now I have to ask you, brave soul, if you heard your name whispered from the trees, would you follow it? Or would you run? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like, subscribe, and share this story if you dare. Because once we begin, there is no turning back. The first scream came just after midnight. It wasn't human. It tore through the black hills of Grinwald like a jagged blade, slicing through fog and silence with a pitch so sharp it made crows crash from the sky. Inside a crumbling farmhouse at the edge of the valley, 17-year-old Elias Varn sat bolt upright in bed, sweat soaking his shirt despite the bitter cold. He had heard it again, for the third night in a row. But this time, it wasn't a dream. Outside, the wind picked up. The old boards of the house moaned under the pressure, like the building itself was trying to warn him. Elias peeled off the covers and grabbed the rusted lantern from his nightstand, its flames struggling against the darkness. The forest, the one the elders had forbidden him to ever enter, loomed just a few miles beyond the creek, cloaked in a fog that never lifted, not even under sunlight. They called it Blackroot Grove. But everyone in Grinwall knew its real name, the Witch's Forest. His grandfather, Donnick Varn, had spoken of it only once, years ago, before the disease rotted his mind and left him babbling to shadows. We planted something in there, boy. It grew teeth. Don't go digging in that soil unless you want to lose your soul. Elias didn't believe in old stories. Not really. But what gnawed at his mind now wasn't folklore. It was his brother's disappearance. Lio, his twin, had vanished 6 nights ago, last seen by the creek. The elders had searched every inch of the village, but no one dared to step past the tree line. No one, except Elias. He wrapped his scarf tight, grabbed his father's hunting knife, and stepped out into the night. The air hit him like a punch to the chest, icy, thick, metallic. The sky above was choked with clouds, no stars, no moon. The grove called to him with a silence that felt alive, like the forest was holding its breath, waiting for his step. He didn't hesitate. His boots crunched over frost-bitten grass as he crossed the creek and climbed over the withered stone fence, marking the edge of Blackroot Grove. The trees, ancient and wrong, loomed with their limbs outstretched like skeletal arms. Their bark wasn't brown, it was black, slick like wet obsidian, and the scent of rot clung to every inch of the place. Every tree leaned inward. Every branch pointed down. He moved carefully, his lantern casting long, dancing shadows that looked far too mobile. The deeper he walked, the quieter everything became. Even the wind dared not breathe here. Then he saw it, a circle of trees, 12 of them. Their trunks bent inward to form a near-perfect dome. The ground within was blackened, scorched, and littered with small bones. Birds, rabbits, something human-shaped. In the center, a stone altar, stained with something dark and dry. And then, a whisper. Elias! He froze. It came from behind. He spun, heart slamming his ribs. No one. Just trees. But they had moved. He could swear it. Branches that had been above him now hung at eye level. Bark that was still a moment ago now wept thick, black sap. He backed away, but roots coiled over his boots, keeping him grounded. Another whisper. Closer. He's waiting. Elias choked on his breath and turned back to the altar. Lio stood there, naked, eyes open wide, unblinking. Pale skin stretched tight over bones. His mouth was sewn shut with thorns. His hands hung limp, but his feet weren't touching the ground. Lio, Elias whispered. His brother didn't respond, just stared. And then behind Lio, something moved. A figure emerged from the shadows of the trees, hooded, cloaked in tattered gray robes that dragged behind her like smoke. No feet, no sound. Her face was obscured by a veil of black lace, but her hands, long gnarled fingers tipped with yellow claws, lifted slowly. She reached toward Lio, and he screamed. The thorns burst from his lips as blood sprayed in ribbons across the altar. His scream was not his voice. It was hers, that same inhuman shriek Elias had heard 3 nights ago. Elias lunged. He grabbed his knife and charged toward the altar, but the ground beneath him cracked open. From the soil rose arms, dozens, skeletal, charred, clutching at his legs, pulling him down into the earth. He slashed wildly, cutting through dead flesh, shrieking in panic. His lantern dropped, shattering, spilling fire across the cursed ground. The witch turned. Though her face remained hidden, Elias felt her eyes, burning, knowing, endless. Then a shriek from the trees. The forest reacted. Bark split open like mouths. Leaves twisted into shapes of screaming faces. Every tree bent lower, like bowing to her presence. Elias, covered in blood and dirt, managed to wrench free of the grasping hands and stumbled backward. Lio was gone. The altar was bare. The witch vanished into smoke. And then, silence. The grove stood as it had before. Empty, cold, still. But something was wrong. Elias looked down at his arm. Fresh thorns had erupted from beneath his skin. His eyes blurred, and the forest around him melted into a shifting, breathing nightmare. Whispers filled the air again, this time louder. Dozens of voices, chanting in a language that made his head throb. His body buckled. He dropped to his knees, clawing at his ears. Then from deep within the forest, a bell tolled. Low, echoing, final. The bell's toll didn't stop. It vibrated through Elias's bones as if the sound had crawled into his marrow and nested there. He tried to move, to stand, but the forest wouldn't let him. The ground squelched under his knees like meat, and the trees around him creaked as if breathing with each chime. Gonting, again and again. He covered his ears, but it was useless. The sound was inside him. Then, movement. A figure sprinted between the trees, small, fast, barefoot. A child? Elias blinked the blood and dirt from his eyes. The bell silenced. His ears rang in the vacuum it left behind. He forced himself to stand, wobbling like a drunk, following the fleeting form deeper into the grove. "Hey!" he called hoarsely. "Who are you?" No answer, only laughter, high-pitched, cruel. Not like a child's joy, but something pretending to be a child, twisted and sharp around the edges. He followed it. He had to. Roots rose like traps from the forest floor, trying to trip him with every step. Faces continued to form in the bark around him, some screaming, some weeping, one smiling wide enough to split the trunk in two. He ran. The laughter guided him, skipping ahead, behind, beside him. Every time he looked, it was gone. Finally, he burst into a clearing and stopped cold. A massive tree stood in the center. Unlike the others, it wasn't dead or blackened. It was alive but wrong. Its bark glistened like fresh skin, slick with a red sheen. Its leaves were made of hair, long black strands tangled and swaying in wind that didn't exist. Its roots pulsed, and beneath it, knelt in prayer, were 5 figures. Their robes were stitched from animal pelts, feathers, and bones. They chanted in the same tongue that had made Elias bleed from the ears earlier. One of them held a long ceremonial dagger made of obsidian and twisted metal. Elias stepped back, but a twig cracked underfoot. All 5 heads snapped toward him. Their faces were covered in masks, each shaped like a different animal: a stag, a wolf, a crow, a serpent, and a goat. The goat mask rose first, towering and hunched. The blade dragged in the dirt behind them. Elias turned to run, but the tree behind him had moved. It blocked his path now, its trunk split open like a mouth filled with writhing roots. The goat mask pointed. A wall of forest closed around him. The chanting resumed, but this time it was meant for him. He backed into the clearing again, trembling, knife still clutched in his hand. "I'm not afraid of you," he lied. The goat mask tilted its head. Then it spoke, but not with a human voice. It echoed with many voices, like an entire village screaming through a throat too narrow to hold them. "You stepped into the bloodwood. Now the forest owns your name." "Where's my brother?" Elias shouted. The goat mask moved aside, and there, chained to the base of the tree, was Lio. He was breathing, barely, but his body, oh God, his body had changed. Vines had grown through his chest and limbs, snaking through his flesh. His fingers were bark now. His skin had become part of the trunk. Only his face remained untouched, eyes blinking slowly, tears of sap trailing down his cheeks. "No!" Elias fell to his knees. "Lio!" The crow-masked cultist stepped forward and pressed a bloody hand to the red tree. The roots curled tighter around Leo's legs. The hair leaves above him began to tremble, as if sensing sacrifice. The goat priest raised its blade. Elias screamed and lunged. He tackled the stag mask, knocking them to the ground, slashing wildly with his knife. Warm blood sprayed his face as the blade found flesh beneath fur. The others responded instantly. The serpent mask hurled a handful of ash into Elias's eyes. He stumbled, blinded. Screams warped into inhuman shrieks. Hands grabbed at him, claws dug into his back, and something cold, slithered into his mouth as he cried out. Hallucinations began. The clearing melted into madness. The tree wept faces from its bark. The grass became a floor of roaches. The sky overhead peeled back like skin, revealing a swirling void of red light and bone. Shadows danced with no source. His brother's body stretched unnaturally, laughing and crying at once. Elias clawed at his face. "Get out of my head!" He slammed his head into the ground. Darkness, silence. He awoke in a bed, his old bed, his farmhouse. The morning light bled through the cracked shutters. Birds chirped outside. Had it been a dream? He sat up slowly, touched his face. No blood, no cuts, no ash, clean clothes, no knife. Footsteps downstairs. "Grandpa," he called. He heard dishes clattering, someone humming a lullaby. He stepped down the stairs and froze. The kitchen was spotless. New, not a cobweb in sight. Fresh bread on the counter. Bright daylight poured through the open window. At the stove, his mother stood, but she had died 8 years ago. "Breakfast is ready, honey," she said, voice warm and sweet. Elias stared, mouth open. "What is this?" She turned to him, her face melted, not burned, not injured, melted. Like wax under a blowtorch, her eyes sagged down her cheeks. Her mouth widened, teeth growing into needles. Blood poured from the sockets as she stepped toward him. "You should have stayed out of the trees, baby," she cooed, voice distorted and gurgling. Elias screamed and ran. Out the front door, into the forest again. The illusion shattered. He was back in the clearing. The tree loomed. The 5 cultists surrounded him once more. But this time, they knelt. The goat priest pressed its forehead to the soil. "You have seen the first gate," it hissed. "You walk between." Elias collapsed, tears streaking his face, breath ragged. The red tree pulsed and whispered, "You are chosen." The whisper echoed inside Elias's skull. "You are chosen." He wanted to reject it, to scream, to run, to claw his way out of the nightmare. But something in his bones had already accepted it. The forest had fed him something. Not food, not water. Something deeper, something primal. It now lived inside him, crawling under his skin like centipedes beneath rotting bark. The 5 cultists remained kneeling. The goat priest stood slowly, head bowed, blade dragging beside him. The red tree trembled, its hair-like leaves rustling with an unnatural breeze that didn't touch anything else. Then the chanting began again, but this time Elias joined them. He didn't mean to. The words flowed from his mouth like blood from a wound. His lips moved with a will not his own. Every syllable he uttered cracked the air and bent the world around him. Shadows danced. The altar behind the tree began to shift, revealing a stairwell of roots spiraling downward into the black earth. The goat priest turned. "You speak the tongue of the hallowed now," he said. "You will descend." Elias shook his head. "No, no, I'm not like you." The priest's voice dropped to a whisper, but it held more weight than a scream. "You are worse!" He was pushed forward by invisible hands. The stairwell gaped wider, as if hungry. The descent smelled of rust, wet leaves, and things that had died in anger. Elias had no choice. His legs moved on their own. The roots closed behind him, and the forest above vanished. Darkness swallowed him. The roots twisted into tunnels, too tight for comfort, forcing him to crawl. Every surface pulsed with warmth. He could hear heartbeats in the wood. The walls breathed. From time to time, he'd pass hollowed pockets in the roots, rooms filled with bones, dolls made of twigs, and dried human skin stretched over frames. In one chamber, he found a mirror, but the face staring back was not his own. It was Lio, his brother, pale, his eyes black pits, and behind him something moved. Elias spun, but nothing was there. He kept moving. At the next turn, his lantern flickered and died. No light, no fire. He reached out in the dark, and his hand touched a face. He recoiled, heart racing. The face did not move. It was carved into the root wall, smooth and cold like stone. Hundreds of other faces were embedded alongside it. Mouths open mid-scream, eyes sewn shut. One of them opened its mouth. "You shouldn't have come," it rasped. Then silence. Elias screamed and crawled faster, bloodied knuckles scraping along bark and stone. His breathing echoed around him like a chorus of the damned. The tunnel opened into a chamber, a wide hollow with a ceiling lost in darkness. At its center stood a figure in a long tattered robe, holding a staff made of bones, fused together at the ends like grasping fingers. "Welcome, son of Varn," it said without turning. The voice was both male and female. It echoed with familiarity and venom. "You were the seed." Elias coughed, bile rising in his throat. "Who are you?" "I am the first root, the unburied thought, the memory that feeds." The figure turned. Its face was a mask of stitched skin. Its mouth dripped black ichor. One eye was a gemstone carved from a human tooth. The other, a burning coal that pulsed like a living organ. It raised its hand and the walls screamed. Visions slammed into Elias's mind. A child burned at the altar, blood turned to ash swallowed by the soil. A line of witches chained by their own hair, dragged into the forest by creatures with antlers and no faces. A woman giving birth under a dying moon, her womb empty but her shadow full. All of them, connected by the tree. "It was never about witches," the figure hissed. "It was never about curses. This forest feeds, and we are merely its servants." Elias fell to his knees, convulsing. His eyes bled. The figure stepped closer. "Do you feel the hunger now?" "I want to leave," Elias gasped. "Let me go." "There is no leaving," the creature crooned. "Not after the forest has spoken your name." It knelt, placing its staff on Elias's chest. "You must carry the ritual forward. You must give it new roots." The chamber darkened further. From the corners, shapes emerged. Robed children, eyeless, giggling in voices that had never been young. They carried cages. Inside them, small twisted creatures screamed silently, their mouths sewn shut with vines. Elias tried to crawl backward, but the earth held him down. "You are the bridge," the first root whispered. "You are the seed that will split the skin of the world." A roar sounded from above. The red tree. It was angry. The first root paused. Its coli pulsed faster. "It seems your brother still fights. He's stronger than we thought." Elias's head snapped up. "Lio! He resists. His soul claws at the gate. Elias's eyes lit with a flicker of hope. Take me to him. The first root laughed, a sound like bones cracking under boot. You wish to suffer further? I'll take his place, Elias said, shaking. Let him go. I'll take it all. The chamber trembled. The children hissed in unison. Such sacrifice, the first root whispered. Very well. Let the tree decide. The roots above tore open like a maw, and Elias was dragged upward, not by hands but by memories. His mother's voice, Leo's laughter, his grandfather's warnings, all twisted, all wrong. He was spat out into the altar clearing once more. The red tree loomed, its leaves now fallen, revealing dozens of skinned bodies hanging from its branches by their hair. Leo still remained bound at the base, but his eyes glowed white now, possessed, changed. The goat priest waited, arms outstretched. He offers himself, it said. The tree opened, wide, hungry, hollow. Elias stepped forward. He looked at his brother. I'm sorry, he whispered. He pressed his hand to the altar, and the tree screamed. The scream of the red tree shattered the clearing like glass. Birds that hadn't sung in decades burst from dead nests in a flurry of blood feathers. The hanging corpses twitched violently, jerking like marionettes on fraying strings. The very roots of the earth coiled in agony beneath Elias's feet, reacting to his touch like fire to oil. He didn't move, not because he was unafraid, but because the tree wouldn't let him. Its bark split and cracked, revealing what was beneath. Not wood, not flesh, but an abyss. A swirling cavity of teeth, bones, and spiraling faces, each howling in languages older than humanity. The tree's scream wasn't sound. It was memory, trauma, regret, a history of agony made sentient. Elias gritted his teeth as blood ran from his ears. The goat priest stepped back and bowed. He is accepted, the cultists chanted, louder now, wild and fevered. Flames erupted around the altar, not from torches or spells, but from the mouths of the trees themselves, exhaling fire like dragons grown from soil. The first root emerged again, now no longer in the form of a twisted humanoid, but something grander, grotesque. Its body was a mass of writhing limbs, human and otherwise, crawling across itself like a living mountain of fused corpses. Its face was now a shifting mask of the dead, each expression replaced by another every few seconds. Enter the wound, it bellowed. Be sown into the root. Elias stared at the tree's hollow heart. The ground beneath him had vanished, replaced by a bridge of living bark. It pulsed with every heartbeat in his body. As he stepped forward, the whispers returned, some gentle, some cruel. This is your destiny. You will never come back. Your pain will feed eternity. He reached the mouth of the tree. One last glance at Leo. His brother had gone still, no struggle, just waiting. The vines around his neck slackened slightly. Elias stepped inside. The interior of the red tree was infinite, bigger than any forest, bigger than the sky. Inside was a world made of roots and memories, dangling from ceilings that didn't exist, and growing from earth that wasn't soil, but something alive. Faces whispered in every grain. The air reeked of rotten thyme and wet moss. Rivers of blood flowed through ravines carved by screams. Elias floated. Or was he walking? He couldn't tell anymore. The space twisted. At times it was a corridor with walls made of skin and screaming eyes. Then it became a cathedral of bone trees, their spines linked by sinew chandeliers. Then a nursery. He stopped. It was a room he recognized. From childhood, from dreams. Wooden crib, pale yellow wallpaper with faded crescent moons. But instead of a mobile, teeth hung over the crib, gently spinning. A woman sat in the rocking chair, her back to him, humming. He whispered, "Mother?" She stopped, turned, no face, only a void filled with whispers. Dozens of voices in unison. She begged us to take you instead, they said, but her prayers were shallow. Elias backed away. This place, it was rewriting itself with every step he took, weaponizing his fears, his grief, and wrapping it in hallucinations too real to deny. Suddenly, Leo appeared, standing in a corridor of trees, his arms outstretched. But not the real Leo. This one had bark spreading from his collarbones and worms crawling from his mouth. His eyes were empty holes. "Join me," he rasped. Elias tried to run, but the ground opened up. He fell. He landed on a slab. A stone altar surrounded by pillars carved with scenes of rituals older than civilization. Women birthing shadows, children being fed to trees, and men tearing out their eyes in worship. Aisle above him hovered a cocoon of roots, and inside it, his true body. Elias gasped. It was him, but older, eyes black, chest hollow, roots growing from his mouth like a twisted beard of veins. This place, this wasn't the present, it was the future. "Witness the bloom," the first root whispered, appearing behind him, now crowned with a halo of thorned antlers. "Witness your final growth." The cocoon cracked. The other Elias opened his eyes and screamed. Elias fell to his knees as the forest inside the tree howled in unity. The trees bled. The sky rained bark. Something massive moved in the distance. A creature made of screams and skeletons, crawling toward the altar. "No!" Elias cried. "I didn't choose this." The goat priest materialized beside him. "But the forest did." They forced him up, placed a dagger of bone in his hand. "You must finish the ritual." "I won't kill anyone." "You won't," the priest said calmly. "You will plant." Elias turned. At the foot of the altar was a child, a girl, young, human, barefoot, tears streaking her cheeks. She looked at Elias with recognition. "Why do I know you?" she whispered. He couldn't speak. The dagger trembled in his hand. He dropped it. "I'm not doing this," he said. The forest reacted violently. The ground split. Fire erupted from the walls. The first root shrieked, its 1,000 voices cursing in unison. "Then the forest will take what it is owed." Vines lashed toward the child. Elias jumped forward, grabbing her, shielding her body with his. The vines pierced his back. Dozens of them. Pain exploded through his spine, heart, and mind. He screamed as they dragged him upward, toward the cocoon, toward his future self. He was being merged. The cocoon opened and swallowed him whole. Inside was every fear, every mistake, every lie he ever told, and one word carved into the wood of his soul: bloom. Silence. Total, crushing silence. Elias floated inside the cocoon of roots, weightless yet crushed, blinded by a light that pulsed inside his skull. There was no air, no sound, only the relentless throb of something ancient breathing with him. He was submerged, not in water, but in sap, thick, pulsing, golden red fluid that moved like it had a purpose of its own. It crawled into his nose, ears, and open mouth. He should have drowned, but the forest wanted him alive. Inside his head, voices clashed like thunder. His own thoughts, fragmented, fading, fought for space against whispers from the tree. Hundreds, thousands. They called themselves the Remembered. They hissed his name. "Elias, you are now root-bound." He screamed, but no sound escaped. The sap entered his lungs, and instead of choking, he breathed it. It filled him with fire and ice. Visions stung his eyes like acid. A man flaying himself beneath a blackened moon. A girl birthing vines from her mouth while cultists knelt around her. A forest swallowing a church whole as its bells rang hollow prayers. The red tree burning, screaming like a dying god. Through it all, Elias felt himself fracturing. His memories peeled away like skin. First his father's face, then his mother's laugh, then Leo, his voice fading into static. Even his own reflection blurred. Who was he? He could feel roots growing inside him, curling through his veins, anchoring to his bones. He was no longer a guest. The tree had made him soil. Suddenly, impact. The cocoon split apart like a burst blister, and Elias slammed down onto a floor of bark and stone. Gasping, coughing up sap, his body convulsed. His skin had changed. Pale, bruised, fingers longer than they should be. Veins bulged across his arms like black vines, pulsing with rhythm not his own. The first root stood above him, now towering, draped in a cloak of screaming faces. "You have bloomed," it said. Elias sat up, teeth chattering. Where am I? The nursery of husk, the creature replied, where all roots are born. Elias blinked. He was in a vast underground cathedral, its pillars made of entangled skeletons, reaching up to a ceiling that dripped blood like rain. Hanging above were rows of empty skins, flayed bodies without organs, swinging gently from nooses made of hair. They looked fresh. The first root raised its staff. You were chosen to carry the ritual forward, but you resisted. Now you will see what becomes of those who fight the forest. A hiss echoed from the shadows. Creatures emerged, small at first, crawling, skittering. Then they rose, twisted mockeries of humans. Their eyes were hollow sockets, mouths sealed with bark, torsos split by tree trunks growing from within. They twitched, jerked, and sniffed the air. One of them groaned. Lio! Elias stood up, stumbling. No, no, no. The creature that said the name limped forward. It was Lio, or what was left. The face still held familiarity, but the eyes were gone. In their place, empty, bleeding bark. His ribs were split open, a red sapling growing from his heart. Save me, the thing gurgled. Elias fell to his knees. He had failed. The ritual had twisted Lio, turned him into part of the forest, a vessel, a root. Let him go, Elias shouted. The first root tilted its head. Let go, fool! He is the forest now, as are you. I'll burn this place down. The first root laughed, and every hanging skin laughed with it. You can try, it whispered. Then everything changed. The floor collapsed beneath Elias, sending him plummeting into another realm of horror. He landed in a forest of flesh, trees with skin, leaves made of teeth, branches that breathed. The sky was a red veil, pierced by veins of black lightning, and walking through it, children, dozens of them, wearing masks carved from bark, chanting in a tongue that made Elias bleed from his nose. They carried sacks of body parts, dropping them at the base of trees, feeding them. Each tree bore the face of someone Elias had seen before, a neighbor, a teacher, his uncle, his grandfather. The forest had kept their souls. He stumbled forward, dodging the eyeless children, trying to find an exit. But the woods wrapped around him. Every step he took twisted the path further. He heard Leo's voice again. You left me, brother! No! Elias screamed. I came back! I'm still here! The trees replied in unison. Not for long. Suddenly he reached a clearing. At its center, a throne made of roots and bones. And on it, something sat. Something wearing Elias's face. Older, hollow-eyed, grinning. You've made it, the doppelganger said. Took long enough. Elias raised his shaking hand. What are you? The figure rose from the throne. I'm what you'll become. The one who stops resisting. The one who accepts. It stepped closer. We are meant to rule the forest, not fight it. Elias backed away. I won't become you. You already have. The figure lunged. They clashed, flesh against flesh, bark against bark. The forest howled with every blow. Elias tore a jagged branch from the ground and stabbed his double through the chest. Sap exploded. The forest screamed, and something woke up beneath them. The ground cracked. A colossal eye opened beneath the soil. Wider than the clearing, a lid of stone and wood peeled back, revealing a pupil filled with stars, blood, and spirals. It looked directly at Elias and whispered, You are not ready. Then everything went dark. Elias awoke, again, back in the altar clearing. The red tree was quiet now. The goat priest gone. Leo's body missing. But something had changed. His hands were no longer fully human. His breath misted even in the heat. The vines inside him now moved of their own accord, reacting to his thoughts. Somewhere in the trees, something called to him, something deeper, older, waiting. The ritual was far from over. People screaming as trees erupted from their mouths. A great tree, the red one, rising through the center of the town like a spire of death. And Elias was at its base, weeping blood. No, he choked. I don't want this. I never wanted any of this. Then change it, said the creature. Take control. Be the rot that chooses where to grow. The vines loosened. He fell. Again. When he hit the ground, he was back in the forest clearing. Alone. Night. The red tree was silent now, but its bark cracked with movement, like it was breathing from within. And Elias knew. He wasn't the same anymore. The forest was inside him now, and it would never let go. But something new stirred in his blood. Not submission, power. And for the first time, Elias wondered, what if I stopped running? The wind screamed through the treetops like a dying woman. Branches snapped under an unseen weight. Roots clawed through the soil like fingers trying to escape a grave. The red tree pulsed behind Elias, its bark cracking open to reveal veins of molten sap that glowed like coals beneath skin. Elias stood still, his breath fogged before him, though the air burned. His fingers twitched. Vines coiled loosely around his arms, moving when he didn't will them to, like snakes sensing prey. The blood in his veins had thickened into something slower, older. He was no longer just Elias. He was becoming something else, and he wasn't sure if he hated it. But he was tired of running. The forest had tried to own him, bury him, rewrite him. Now he would walk through it on his own terms. For Lio, for the truth, for whatever was waiting at the center of this cursed land. He turned from the red tree, following a narrow path that hadn't been there moments before. Each step sank into soil that felt like flesh. He didn't flinch anymore. The unnatural had become expected. The forest whispered. But the whispers no longer clawed at his mind. They bent around him, respectful. He was becoming something the forest feared. He didn't walk far before he saw it. A cathedral of trees. Towering redwoods twisted together, their trunks fused like bone. Vines hung like drapes over an arched opening that led into darkness. From within came a steady sound, chanting. Hundreds of voices, all in the same breathless rhythm. Elias stepped through. The air was heavy. Every breath carried memories that weren't his. Screams, laughter, rituals etched in time. Along the bark-lined corridor, murals were carved with fingernails, depictions of sacrifice, birth, and decay. The forest's holy book written in blood. He emerged into a massive chamber, round and hollowed out of living wood. In the center, a circle of 13 figures, cloaked in black and bark, their faces covered by masks, each one carved from bone, each bearing a different expression: rage, grief, ecstasy, horror. At the center of the circle, a pit filled with thick, undulating darkness. One of the cloaked figures turned toward Elias. "We know your name," it rasped. "We've spoken it since before your mother first screamed your arrival into this world." Another added, "You are the 13th." Elias didn't speak. He didn't have to. They knew he had questions. One of the figures stepped forward and placed a wooden hand on his chest. "You carry the seed. You carry the root. You carry the echo." "Where is Lio?" Elias finally asked, voice flat. The cloaked figures parted, and from the darkness of the pit, something rose. It was Lio, or what was left of him. His body was twisted, taller, bent backward in impossible angles, bark woven through his chest and limbs. His eyes were hollow, bleeding sap, but his mouth moved. "Elias! Brother!" Elias took a step forward. The hooded figures held him back. "He is not yours anymore," one whispered. "He is the conduit." "Release him!" Elias barked, but the pit rumbled, and Lio, if it was truly him, screamed. Not a human scream, something far worse, a sound like trees splitting and metal grinding in the same breath. The vines in Elias's arms writhed, his vision blurred. A voice thundered from the pit. "He is the root child. He is the offering." The hooded figures raised their hands. They began to chant. The roots of the cathedral twisted downward. The floor beneath Lio began to open wider. From it rose a monstrous figure, half tree, half flesh. Its eyes were vertical slits of burning sap. Its jaw unhinged and revealed a spiral of mouths within. Elias recognized it from his visions. The mother root, the forest's god, the one who fed on the faithful and rebirthed them as guardians of this blighted land. It reached toward Lio. "No," Elias whispered. Not this. His body moved without thinking. The vines in his arms exploded outward, whipping through the air like spears. They tore through the chanting figures, ripping masks away. Beneath the hoods were faces warped by bark and madness, not human anymore. They screamed as they died. The cathedral shook. The pit cracked wider. Elias launched himself forward. He wrapped his arms around Lio, real flesh, even if corrupted. And the moment they touched, they fell into the roots, into the memories, into the very veins of the forest itself. They plunged through layers of ancient moments. A girl burned alive, her screams feeding the red tree. A village sacrificing its children to stop the forest from devouring their fields. A cult forming from survivors, worshiping what should have been buried. A family, broken, lost, searching. Elias as a child staring at the tree line, hearing it call him. And then, a memory not his own. A ritual. The first ritual. A woman, her face covered in leaves, screaming as roots tore through her. And standing over her, the first druid, the one who started it all. He turned in the memory and looked directly at Elias. "You will finish what I began," Elias screamed. He awoke on the forest floor. Night, Lio was beside him, breathing, still twisted, but alive. The cathedral was gone. Only trees remained, but something had followed them out of the pit. A heartbeat deep below, a presence. Awake now. And Elias realized he hadn't stopped anything. He'd started it. The ground was no longer still beneath them. It throbbed in rhythm with the presence awakened from beneath the forest floor. Elias lay sprawled beside his brother, both half shattered by the descent into memory, spirit, and madness. The night stretched out above them, but no stars pierced the sky, only the red glow that now pulsed from the trees themselves. Lio stirred beside him, his breath ragged. "Did, we escape?" Lio asked, his voice raw and cracked like shattered bark. Elias didn't answer, because he knew the truth. They hadn't escaped. They had been released. The heartbeat beneath the earth grew louder, pulsing through the soles of Elias's feet, into his spine. He gritted his teeth as pain shot through his bones. A voice hummed low in his skull, ancient and terrible. "You opened the gate, seed-bearer. Now the forest is one again." Lio coughed, blood and sap spilling from his mouth. His eyes were clearer now, human for the first time in what felt like centuries. "It's inside me. I can feel it pulling. It wants to root itself deeper." Elias knelt beside him, gripping his arm. "We stop it. Here. Now before it spreads." Lio looked up at him. "How?" From behind them, the red tree cracked. Its trunk split open like flesh. A howl tore through the forest, not from a beast, but from thousands of voices crying out in unison. Not cries of pain or rage, but worship. They came shambling from the dark, the rooted, twisted husks of once human forms, bodies partially consumed by bark, moss growing from their eyes and mouths. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, forming a circle around the brothers. The largest among them stepped forward. It wore the face of a man long dead, their father, only its mouth stretched too wide, filled with teeth made of thorns. "You brought us the final branch," it said, gesturing toward Lio. "The last bloodline, the unrooted heir." Lio tried to rise but collapsed with a gasp. Roots coiled from his chest like veins desperate to touch soil. "I won't let you take me," he rasped. The rooted choir lifted their hands, palms bleeding. They began to chant in a tongue that bent Elias's ears to hear it. The red tree burned brighter, cracking open into a gaping maw of sap and writhing bark. "The offering will be planted," the rooted said in unison. "The god bloom will rise." "No," Elias growled. He stood, hands clenched. The vines in his arms stirred, writhing not in fear but fury. "You took Lio. You turned him into this. You burned our village. You whispered to our mother when she went to the edge of the forest that night. You've always been watching, feeding, wanting." He raised his arms, and the forest answered. Vines exploded from the soil, spiraling around his body. They didn't bind. They armored. Bark hardened over his arms and chest like a second skin. His eyes flared red, and the forest recoiled. The rooted shrieked. A command was spoken, and they charged. Elias moved like a storm. His vines became blades, spinning, slicing, tearing through the undead congregation. Roots burst from the ground like spears, impaling three at a time. The forest groaned with fury and fire as its own children were slaughtered. Leo screamed as the vines tried to consume him. Elias turned toward the tree, its maw yawning wider. He knew what had to be done. There was no running anymore. There was no return. Only one thing left. End the ritual. He charged the red tree. Its bark shifted, faces screaming as he approached. It tried to pull him in, tried to seduce him. Visions poured into his mind. A world reborn with nature's fury. Towns drowned beneath forests. Humans kneeling before great trees with bleeding fruit. Him, sitting on a throne of roots, crowned in leaves. But he tore through it. He reached the core, a heart of the forest, huge, pulsing, alive. He raised his hand and plunged his arm deep into it. The forest screamed. The rooted fell to the ground in agony, clutching their chests. The tree howled as sap poured from its cracks, flooding the earth in rivers of crimson. The sky turned black. Thunder rolled. The forest convulsed, dying. But it wasn't enough. He felt the power curling through him now, a seed of divinity. It offered him a choice: rule or burn. Elias looked down at his brother. Leo, barely conscious. "Forgive me," he whispered. He pulled the power into himself. Every vine, every root, every branch within the forest twisted toward him, feeding into his veins. And he became the forest, a storm of green and red. He raised his arms and brought them down. The forest split apart. Trees shattered like glass. The cathedral collapsed into ash. The red tree imploded, consumed from within. And then, silence. When the dust settled, Elias stood in a clearing, scorched by power. Leo lay beside him, coughing, blinking in the new morning light. The trees were gone, burned to stumps. The whispers silenced. The rituals ended. Elias fell to his knees, the bark armor crumbling from his body. His arms bled where vines had torn free, but he felt lighter and hollow. "You did it," Leo murmured. Elias looked at the sky, clear, pure, for the first time in decades. "No," Elias said. "We did." Leo smiled weakly. And then, a single flower bloomed beside the remains of the red tree. Red, bright, beating like a heart. Elias stared at it and knew the forest would grow again, but this time he would be its keeper, its guardian, not its slave. The witch's forest was no more. Only the scars remained, but deep beneath the earth, something still pulsed. Waiting. The end. If you've made it this far, thank you for venturing through the dark with me. Did you feel the horror? Did the forest speak to you too? Let me know in the comments. Would you have made it out of the witch's forest? Like, subscribe and share if you want more original horror stories like this one. The forest always hungers, and I've got more to feed it.